Okay, so I just dropped out of university with 6 months left. I had international consulting competitions under my belt and a big tech grad offer that I now have to turn down, all because I chose momentum. I'm now a 20-year-old agency owner who consults high-level content creators on their product and offer positioning. But what got us here? I was actually speaking earlier with a client of mine who was going through a very similar situation in the sense that they didn't know where to go with their life, their business, the whole lot. And the more and more I work with these types of creators, the more I realize that this is actually one of the biggest blockers that stop these creators from achieving the success that they want. You know, increasing our luck surface area and actually deciding on where to place our focus. And I think my decision to leave so much potential on the table, leaving university and whatnot, is just one radical example of this. But I will say it was still grounded in rational decision making and frameworks, of which you can model after to find your North Star and answer the existential question of what do I want to do with my life, especially as somebody who's in their 20s. Okay, this is going to be a long chat, so I think we need to first understand why this whole thing matters. And I've sort of hinted at it before. It's the fact that spending time and breaking down what you actually want to do with yourself is probably one of the highest leverage actions that you can make on your time. Because if you don't decide yourself which path you're going to take, somebody else will decide for you. And this is true whether or not you're starting a business, you're starting content, or just working a job. Trust me, I've done all three. It's universal, and life is so much better lived when you start to work around your own decisions, not someone else's. So let's cut out the chatter in this long conversation and get to actually how we can get this done. All right, so here's how you do it. The first thing is you need to spend more time with yourself. This is by far the highest level action step that you can take here, but it is the foundation of how you're actually going to make better and better decisions on where you want to go with yourself. It is extremely, extremely rare, especially for more ambitious people like ourselves, to spend the time in our own heads. We're so overly consumed with trying to find the next big idea or doing the next build. Honestly, sometimes we're just doom scrolling and we don't actually spend enough time reflecting on what we actually want. We always feel like we want to be doing something or need to be doing something that we don't give ourselves the time to just sit with our own thoughts. You ever heard of shower thoughts before? This means emptying your schedule, maybe even traveling for a bit. This is where you can find the true revelations that you need to then make a much bigger decision. See, whether we like it or not, and this is underlyingly intentional, but the world is now being designed in a way where we work in auto-suggestion. We consume content that make decisions for us by the things that we consume, the appetite that we have, the places, people, and media that we interact with literally every single day. It starts to drive our decision making for us. And to overcome it, we need to spend more time just sinking in with our own thoughts. Basically, the step one of everything is just be bored again. When was the last time you were bored? When was the last time you sort of just sat there in a chair and looked at a view? Literally last week, I was in Thailand for like an international consulting case. It was like my last foyer in uni. And I just spent some time staring out into the distance thinking and really thinking about whether or not it was a rational decision to make the leap. That is what it means to be bored again. Not switching attention, just sitting there with your own thoughts. That is the foundation of you figuring out what you're actually going to do with yourself and making sure that that decision is actually grounded. Okay, so the second thing is track your energy, not your hours. See, it's really, really easy to think about the tasks that you do every single day. And you might first see the fact that you spend a lot of time doing this one thing and mistakenly think that that is the direction that you actually want to take. That is a misconception, because the thing that actually matters are the tasks that give you energy, that revitalize you. Those are the things that you should actually be focusing on. You ever have a task where you do it and time just feels like it flies, but then there are other tasks that don't necessarily feel that way? It's almost like it goes the opposite, where 1 minute feels like an hour to you. See, tracking your energy levels while you're doing your day-to-day tasks and understanding what revitalizes you and what drains your energy is how you're going to be managing your day-to-day when you finally lock in to focus on what you can do long-term. See, I spoke about energy management, but this shouldn't be confused with difficulty. There are times where you've probably been in school and you feel like this subject is an absolute drag compared to another easier subject, that is not really your energy spiking up or down. It's more so you operating at a level where you are more comfortable. Do not confuse comfort with energy, because otherwise you're going to regress to simply what's easy rather than what actually energizes you. In simple terms, pick the task that is effortless to you but excruciatingly hard for others to do. Okay, so that's number 2. Then number 3 is subtract before you add. I want to really preface this because I struggled with this literally 2 years ago when I started my creator journey. But I was constantly playing this side questing game of adding new commitments every single week. So if you pile on another commitment, I need you to understand that focus is going to be your number 1 key towards figuring out what you want to do long term. If you're task switching every single day, not giving yourself the time to breathe, not only will you not be able to do everything that we previously spoke about, but even when you do find the direction that you're going to be heading, bringing that into reality is going to be extremely hard. So the best way to figure out what to subtract from this point is look into what you're doing out of obligation. Ask yourself what you're doing out of momentum, out of the fear of missing out, and just commit to subtracting those types of things from your life. If you take a test, remove maybe 1 or 2 things every single week, and those don't radically change your life, then it wasn't really important in the first place. I actually had a podcast episode, and I don't think it's out yet, but it will probably come out sometime within the next week, with a 7-figure entrepreneur. And we spoke about this exercise on writing down 25 things that you've committed to within your life and only ever picking 5 of them. The rest of them is just noise. And that's where you start to gain signal. You should subtract before you add. Okay, we're almost there. The 4th one is going to be auditing your envy. This one is pretty easy to understand, but the people that you surround yourself with, the people you consume online, it's really easy to feel like you're behind or somebody has something that you don't. The actionable for this, for you to audit it, is to write down 3 people who you feel that way towards. What are 3 people whose presence make your stomach drop a little bit? And ask yourself, write this down as well, why that is. Is it the money, the freedom that they have? Is it the fact that they have one clear and understandable line while you have 14 different branches of things that you haven't decided on yet? The reaction that you have while doing this exercise, yes, it's going to be uncomfortable, but I want you to embrace that discomfort. Because I need you to reframe that this is not a negative emotion. That is you moving towards your conviction. That is you figuring out what you actually want to do with yourself. You are creating a compass by channeling that energy through your emotion. Figure out this black coffee theory of what you do want and what you don't want. For me, I 100% knew that I wanted to take ownership of my own work. I wanted full ownership over the results I provided for others, and I wanted ownership of being able to control my own hours. And this actually defined what I didn't want as well. This defined to me that I didn't want to live a normal life. I didn't want to get enticed by these free lunches at these corporate offices. I didn't want to have to make this small talk towards people who are 10, 20 years older than me in the workplace. I didn't want to suck up to anyone by asking them for coffee chats and ask baseless questions on how I can get through an interview or get a referral from people, because I knew that wasn't the game that I wanted to play. And I figured that out through really looking into who I actually looked up to and why I looked up to them. That honestly gave me more direction than anything that I possibly could have done over the past 2 years. Okay, that's audit your envy. The final one, and this is really going to hit it home for you. Because for me to make my final decision to leave university, despite coming from an immigrant background, family worked across multiple generations since moving to Australia, and give us the ability to take the risks that we can now, it all came down to looking backwards for the thread. And this was the final decision for me, because we've proven momentum, we've proven what we wanted long term, and we've also mapped out the conditions in which I needed to hit to make that final call so that I wouldn't regret it later on. See, I had a few conditions to live the full university experience and really understand that if I wanted to, I could. See, often there's a pattern from our past that signals a way forward. And a lot of the time, I've been proven over and over again on this, that you are nurtured into who you are today from the experiences that you've had in the past. So you might discover that you don't necessarily need to invent a new direction for yourself. You just need to uncover it from a season of your life that you've previously lived. See, for my case, I picked up my first camera when I was 10 years old. And ever since then, I've considered myself somewhat of a filmmaker. And because of that, I feel so familiar and in tune with the creative industry. And even better, my own limiters that were broken from my ventures into e-commerce and whatnot when I was really, really young, to now building my personal brand and working with 8-9-figure entrepreneurs as their creative directors. There have been patterns time and time again that have signaled that this is the actual direction that I want to take, and it is one that I can see myself doing long term. So those are the 5. Spend more time with yourself, track your energy, not your focus, subtract before you add, audit your envy, and look backwards for your thread. You've made it to this point. So to action all of this, the first thing I'd tell you to do is give yourself time. Don't work on Sundays. Spend that time using this exact framework to reflect on genuinely where you want to be. Recalibrate, simplify, and make your own decisions and make the conditions in which you're going to make that decision on. I know I'm speaking from the lens of creative business owner, but this is almost applicable to everyone in every situation. And if you're a content creator who is ready to scale up with their content and offer positioning, feel free to book in a call with me and my team and we'll get in touch on how we can best work together. Otherwise, hope this chat has given you the steps that you need to really think through your direction moving forward, and best wishes on your journey.